We are live.
Still nothing on Twitch yet, but that tends to be slow.
Nick Goyle, how you doing, buddy? You're probably about ready to leave for Vegas. We're going to be talking about the newly added ADP that we're working on here in this first mock draft. We've got Bridger jumping all over the place. Video resizing on its own. If you are out there, please let me know if you can hear us.
You.
If you hear typing, you can hear
That's me.
Brad.
No matter how lightly I type.
All right. Whopping 2 visitors in here. They probably didn't expect it. I meant to put an announcement out earlier. I meant to do a lot of stuff. I mean to do a lot of stuff. I have written quite a few articles in the past 24 hours, though.
You're not messing around. You're a superstar.
Hey, man, that's news that needs to get out there.
Mm-hmm. You're rocking.
I'm also working on getting us on... Hey, Keith, how you doing, buddy? Working on getting us on Apple News right now. So...
Oh, that's awesome.
Get more and more stuff out there. Keith, how you doing today, buddy? Bridger, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Just busy.
Good,
Excited to be back on after missing last week, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's I can have as many excuses as I want. I need to make sure it gets done, but sometimes just stuff catches up to you. But last week was my bad. My bad. Keith
We were all
says,
slacking.
Keith says, I'm doing good. I'm liking my mock draft picks. That's good. Hopefully we'll get these sped up a little bit. We've got a couple guys that are holding us back a little slow. All right. Well, first off, we'll jump into a little bit of news. There's not a whole lot going around, but it seems like what is out there is players that have to talk to the NFL because of one thing or another. Last week, Tyreek Hill met with the NFL for 8 hours, and there's all different kinds of news and notes going around and opinions and rumors of some think it's going to be as little as a 4-game suspension, but a suspension coming. What are your thoughts, Bridger? Like, what do you think about this whole Tyreek situation? We're not going to stay on it a whole long time, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
I mean, I'm not trying to guess what's going to happen as far as punishment goes anymore. I thought he should have been gone for good, at least the full season, but it's looking like it's going to be shorter now. And I guess as far as my thoughts go, I'm just hoping that they find something else on him and get him out of the league.
Yeah, I will be honest. I hate rooting for that, but something's... Brad, can you send that in Discord by chance?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I hate rooting for that for anybody. Like I've said a number of times, like I don't like seeing people's careers ruined, but there's just something about this whole situation that doesn't sit well with me personally. Everybody knows that. I haven't been quiet about it. But that's all I'm gonna say on that. Brad, what are your opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, anytime, the league needs to crack down on these really poor decisions these guys are making. But I think that the teams need to take it upon themselves to get some better mentors. You hear about, especially like with the rookies, they go through the rookie symposiums and things like that. But for as much money and as important to the league as some of these high profile names are, Kareem Hunt, Tariq Hill, these guys really need to have better mentors around to help them keep themselves out of trouble. I mean, but in his case, I said it earlier in the offseason that, if that's true, which now we're hearing, it sounds like it's probably pretty accurate. I mean, he needs a very large suspension, not this 4-game stuff we're hearing. He deserves much harsher punishments.
That's my thing, and I know that Bridger and I have talked about it on the pod a little bit in the past, but there comes a certain time where okay, maybe he didn't do it. Maybe he did. We don't know. There's no evidence that says he absolutely did it. The only thing that is a glaring fact to me is that they came out, they said this child was abused. The child was removed from the home because he was being abused. And nobody spoke up for the child so that whoever is responsible would be held accountable. And I don't care which side it is. They know who did it, and they're not speaking on it. It makes everybody just as guilty as the next. That's my opinion. There's a 3-year-old kid that has nobody other than CPS that is looking out for him, and that's sad.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
I
agree
mean, you got to
completely.
look out for the kid in the situation for sure. And even those where the husband and the wife, like the Kareem Hunt stuff where it's got issues with women. I mean, you need to protect those that, these guys are star athletes. They're very athletic. They're very strong in a lot of cases. I mean, they've got to be smarter, and they need to protect those that really can't protect themselves.
Yeah, if he can go up against, 260-pound linebackers that run 4.40s, a woman and a child are going to be no contest against him, or anybody else in the NFL for that matter. I don't care who it is. There's just no reason for it. And the thing that really bothers me is that you see guys that have not hurt a single person that are, suspended indefinitely. And this is actually starting to come out. There's a lot of different analysts that are saying the same thing. You can't have these guys banned indefinitely, and you're giving people with this type of history and these types of events 4 games. They tried giving Ray Rice 2 games and it was clear. There was a video of him cold clocking his wife or fiance, and they were going to give him 2 games. And they can say we didn't see the video until afterwards, but they did. They're the NFL. But that brings us to tomorrow. Ezekiel Elliott has to meet with the NFL again because of his Las Vegas incident. What are your thoughts on that, Brad? Can Zeke stay out of trouble?
Well, probably not. I mean, he's one of those that he really does need somebody on staff with him that's just watching out for him because, he's probably the most important person in the Cowboys organization, and they just keep letting him do dumb stuff. I mean, I get it that he wants to have a good time. He's in his 20s. I remember being in my 20s and doing a lot of dumb stuff, but for this 10-year period in his life, they really need to focus on keeping him out of trouble. I mean, what he does after football is on him, but I expect them to probably do something very similar. He's probably going to get another suspension. The weird thing with me is they seem to treat the marijuana cases much harsher than they're treating things that are actually violent towards people. I mean, like we've talked about numerous times with, like the Josh Gordon stuff. Marijuana, yeah, I mean, it may not be the smartest thing, but you're seeing reports coming out nowadays about how that helps a lot of these athletes. So, things that could be beneficial the NFL seems to be having a bigger problem with than things that are clearly bad. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott may not have gone as far as what we're seeing with Tariq or Kareem or any of these other guys, but he's still, you're seeing a trend here with him, and he really needs to get it together.
Right. You absolutely still know better. And unless it is an actual mental problem, like with Brandon Marshall, he has been very, very open about his mental issues, and that being a big contributor to, people don't realize, there were 8 different instances where police were called to his house for him abusing his wife. And this was before the Ray Rice thing, so it wasn't brought to the attention of, the fans like it is now. But, he had a mental issue that he needed help with. When he did, he got better, and he we haven't heard anything in a number of years since before he joined the Bears about that. So, what are your opinions on Ezekiel Elliott there, Bridger?
Excuse me. With Zeke, I mean, yeah, like Brad was saying, he's just got to learn to stay out of trouble. Obviously, nothing he did this time was especially violent or really even that big of a problem. He got intoxicated and acted like an idiot. But I just think we're going to keep seeing that kind of stuff from him. And there's no one that can really stop him. He's just got to wisen up and realize that he's got a lot at stake, and he's got to learn to control himself and save the partying for another time in his life. But, I mean, just the fact that it's even getting much attention right now, and the fact that he probably will be suspended for it, for bumping into a security guard. He didn't even throw any punches or anything. While the Tyreek Hill thing's going on, it just, I don't know. It's tough to see it as something that matters until they iron out some of the more serious issues.
Here's my problem with the whole scenario, and it doesn't matter if guys did do something, if they didn't do something. But right now, the NFL has one guy that makes the decision on what's going to happen with these guys when these things come up. So if Roger Goodell wants to suspend somebody for 6 games, he can suspend them for 6 games. And the whole, arbiter situation, like, it's not very easy for the NFL players to overturn a suspension. Like it is, other sports are easier. Baseball is almost always half of whatever suspension's handed down, and it's not that easy to do in the NFL. But they need a whole committee, a group of people that go in, get all the facts, figure out what needs to happen, and that whole group makes the decision rather than just basically one guy making that decision. It's crazy that it's that way. It is crazy that, especially in Zeke's first instance, there was a lot of evidence that said that, the story was fabricated and everything, and he was still suspended for 6 games. But then somebody else can do something and be suspended for 4. And, it's just, there's no rhyme or reason to anything. There's no consistency. But the thing that is the harshest is when somebody fails a drug test. And now I understand, like, if they are doing cocaine or shooting up heroin or something like that, but when it's marijuana, and it's not just in the NFL that people are saying that it benefits people, but it's being legalized across the country. And not just for medical use, for recreational. It's just crazy that it's treated so harshly, in my opinion. All right, let's get on from that. We don't want to talk about negative stuff all day, so one thing that we're going to do is, most people know, we started our first mock draft, which is just a 1 QB PPR 16 rounder. We've got 5 different divisions drafted, so we've got 60 different people helping make up this ADP. So one thing that I want to, well, first off, let me shout out Joseph and Sam and Chris Resendez in the chat. Chris said, "Come to Canada, you will see the worst of weed. The league is a joke." I mean, do you guys have like a lot of crazy potheads or something in Canada? I'm not sure exactly what that meant, but this ADP, is there anybody that sticks out to you guys that, like, you didn't expect to be that high or that low, or just anything that sticks out to you, Bridger?
I guess the first thing that stuck out to me was looking at where Le'Veon Bell's at 11 overall. I love Le'Veon Bell this year. I've said a couple times that I think he's going to finish as the top running back this season, but I haven't seen him go anywhere close to that in any startup I've done this offseason. I think the earliest I've seen him go was 206 in a league that I drafted him, and that was a couple months ago, and he seemed to have fallen further than that since then. So him being that high was really surprising for me.
Yeah, and he seems to be. That was my first thought too. So I agree completely with Bridger. But when you look at the different leagues that drafted him, there's quite a bit of discrepancy. I mean, we have him going as high as 7 and as low as like 17. So it's almost like the community is kind of split as to, is this guy really a top end talent or kind of the next tier below?
He is definitely a polarizing player, because you don't know what you're going to get. Yes, he was very, very good, but he did sit out a year, but we've seen that before. I mean, Ricky Williams came back and had some good years after he went on a weed sabbatical for a year. But I did not expect to see him as a first round pick. I figured he would be mid to late second, where he did end up in a couple. Well, I guess he was mid second at the worst, but that's the problem, I think, with that second round in startup this year. You've got a lot of guys that are question marks and that people aren't sure about. Obviously, Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, a lot of people are wondering about. Julio Jones is older. Dalvin Cook has a lot of question marks. So I think that's why you see a lot of variance in those players. Some of them are, going 13 overall, but then they'll go 20th overall, and it's just a weird second round, I think, this year. Do you guys have any thoughts on that, like that group from 13 to 24?
Yeah, I agree with you completely on the second round. I've actually, in several leagues that I've done this offseason, I've traded out of the second round completely, just because it's kind of a dead spot. You've got some old, well, not old, but aging receivers with Antonio Brown, Julio, Adam Thielen, those kind of guys. And then you've got Stephon Diggs, who has all sorts of potential, but has sort of just been what he is the past few years. Amari Cooper, who's super polarizing. He's as polarizing as Le'Veon Bell is. And then you've got running backs with question marks. So, I mean, it's a big sort of area I like to avoid. I'd rather pick up an extra fourth-round pick by moving back and get more of those mid-round guys over reaching on a guy up in the second round.
Yeah, for me, it would just depend on who's available at my pick. I probably wouldn't trade that pick until it was on me, because there are some guys, like, obviously, like, I think it's crazy that Mike Evans is at 13.
Yeah.
I would have him in front of Melvin Gordon probably and if I looked at my rankings and knew him right off the top of my head, that's probably where I've got him, right behind Michael Thomas. But I do want to ask you guys, because I just made this trade like an hour and a half before we went live. I'm in a rebuild, and Josh Custer traded for Amari Cooper, and then immediately sent me an offer, Amari Cooper straight up for Nick Chubb. What do you guys do in that situation?
I personally would take Chubb over Amari Cooper, but it's close. I just think with Cooper's sort of up and down weeks, last year he had all of his points in a couple games. And I've never been a big fan of him. I like Nick Chubb a lot, and with the Kareem Hunt news that's now going around, his job might even be more secure than I already thought it was. So I would take Chubb, but I think it's a completely fair trade.
Yeah, in a rebuild, I'd go with the receiver just because of the longevity. Amari has a better chance of surviving your rebuild depending on how long it really is going to take. If it's kind of a nuclear scenario where you're really blowing the whole thing up, I mean, he's probably going to last longer, but Chubb's got the better talent and is probably going to be better, probably for the next few years. But those running backs don't have the same type of window as a receiver would. And I agree completely with Bridger. I mean, Cooper's going to give you great weeks and he's going to give you crappy weeks, and especially with Dak as his quarterback. But you got to go, with the guy who will probably survive and help your team when you're ready to start competing.
See, I think the difference is while Amari Cooper is a little up and down, and I love consistency, for one, you're not going to get that with wide receivers very often. There's only a few Julios and Antonio Browns in the league. But like, he can actually win you weeks, and I just don't think that Nick Chubb is ever going to be the pass catcher out of the backfield. I think he's highly overrated right now. He's a great running back. He's great running the ball. Maybe one of the 5 best in the league. Same thing goes for Derrick Henry. But if you're not going to catch the ball, it's real hard to hold this type of value, and that's where I think he's overrated. But I did make the trade, and everybody knows I'm much higher on Amari Cooper. People don't realize the guy's got, I think Hopkins is the only receiver in the NFL right now that had more receptions and yardage by the time they were 25. I think Cooper's a lot more talented than people give him credit for. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting because they are. Nick Chubb is 18th overall, and Amari Cooper is 20th overall. So they're really, really close in ADP. So who else here in this second round do you think is just, like, grossly overrated, if anybody?
Well, I guess the biggest name that would stand out as probably potentially the biggest question mark would be James Conner in my mind. I think he's solid, but he's one of those guys, I'm in the same bandwagon as Bridger. If I can get out of round 2, I probably will. I mean, quite honestly, Mike Evans and Joe Mixon are the only 2 in round 2 that I've tried to target this offseason. Everybody else I'm kind of waiting and seeing. But I would think that James Conner is probably one of those guys where at the end of this year I could build the case where he's not number 14, or number 13. So he's probably the one that I'm most concerned about, just because who knows what to make of him. I mean, you saw him slow down the stretch, and they have some talent behind him, and Benny Snell and Jalen Samuels. Butcher his names. But I would lean over to our resident Steelers fan and let him tell me why James Conner's the man, and I'm crazy for thinking that.
Well, James Conner is the man, and you are crazy for thinking that. I don't think Benny Snell's good. That's part of it. Same reason I was so high on Juju last year is I didn't think James Washington was good, and I didn't think he fit into the offense. And I think Jalen Samuels has his place, but Connor's actually one of the guys that I would put in round 2 and be pretty confident in that. As far as guys I don't like in round 2, it's tough to say any of them are grossly overrated because they're all just so boom bust. But I guess the 2 that I'd be most concerned about would be Antonio Brown and Dalvin Cook. Cook because of his injuries, and Antonio Brown going to a new, much worse offense and being 30 years old. I guess both of those guys have a lot of risk there, but I wouldn't say either one is necessarily grossly overrated.
Yeah, I can definitely agree. I think Dalvin Cook is one of the most talented running backs, but if you read the article I wrote about, jumping into running back 1 territory for the first time, I think the only thing that's keeping him back is if he can stay on the field and stay healthy. And then do the Vikings limit his workload like they did last year? Last year they had a good backup. I'm not sure that they'll have that same type of production out of a backup, so maybe he sees more touches. Antonio Brown in the short term, I'm not worried about at all. He's just going to see so many targets that he's going to produce, but how long does that last? I have no idea. So I agree. I think to draft him that high, you have to have a plan that you can't be debating whether you're going for it now or you're going for it in the future. If you're going to take him in the second round, you have to be preparing to make a run this year, because you're not going to get that value if you go to flip him, because I think no matter what happens, he will be lower this time next year just because he's going to be 31. We've seen it with Larry Fitzgerald, who kept producing, but he still dropped every year because he got a year older. So I think you really have to be prepared to draft age and production over long-term potential if you're going to take him in the second round. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But in this area, the one that just drives me nuts, and this is going to happen in one QB all the time, but the fact that Patrick Mahomes went as high as 15, 15th twice, or 15th, 17th. He went in the top 20 3 times. That to me in a 1 QB is just ludicrous. Um, there's going to be regression. Not that he won't be good, but the gap between him and the number 2 quarterback this year is probably not going to be all that big. And right now we're looking at, Andrew Luck is the number 2 quarterback, and he's not going until 20 picks later. I'll take a shot on somebody else at 25, and then if I really want a quarterback that early, I'll overdraft Andrew Luck by 6 spots or whatever, and take him and another player rather than take Mahomes at 25. What are your guys' thoughts on Mahomes going that high? 25.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's way too early. I actually just looked at it just for comparison's sake. If you take Mahomes there at 25, the guy right before and after him were Keenan Allen and Adam Thielen. If you scroll down to Jared Goff at 102, the guy that went before him was Jared Cook and Curtis Samuel. So you're effectively swapping a guy like Keenan Allen for a guy like Curtis Samuel just to get Mahomes over Jared Goff as your quarterback. And even Goff is a guy that is going too early, in my opinion. I think you're way better off taking a quarterback later and just, if you have to, playing it year by year. But there's still some good franchise guys down there later. So any quarterback going that early is just absurd.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I kind of have a rule, like I'll never take a quarterback in 1 QB until earliest the 10th round, but I try to wait till the 12th round in the draft to take one. And a lot of times you can get a vet in that range, and it just pays off so much more because you get that talent, positional talent early, and the difference between the quarterbacks is never like so crazy that you can't make it up.
Yeah.
What about you, Brad?
Yeah, with it being a PPR and it's just a 1 QB, I mean, you don't have any reason to go with a quarterback, especially because there's so many more talented guys there. I mean, even a little bit further down, you've got Brandon Cooks, you've got T.Y. Hilton. I mean, you've got some running backs that still have value for the Kenny Galladay fans. He's there. I mean, I don't know why you would take Patrick Mahomes over a lot of the guys that are underneath him. So it was very surprising to me. I definitely would have gone after basically any position outside of maybe Damian Williams. That's only because I don't like him at all. So most of the probably 10 to 15 guys underneath Mahomes, I would have taken before Mahomes. I mean, there doesn't make any sense. Quarterbacks just aren't. I'm not going to say they're not valuable. They're just not as valuable in something where it's just 1 QB, and especially in something like a 12-team league. There's going to be plenty of guys to go around. So I wouldn't touch them.
They just told me that Bridger's a little loud. I'm a little quiet, so I'm trying to work on mic volumes here. We'll see if that sounds better. Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with the Damian Williams take, but, everybody knows that too.
Right.
I've got some, and I'm trying to get this article out, but it's kind of turned into a monster. But I've got this article I'm working on that covers points per touch, and I'm trying to see how that relates to actual football production, and then how that works out in fantasy. See if there's any correlation that we can look at to kind of pinpoint guys that could either regress in future years or guys that could break out or whatever. Chris says, is there any proof on Hunt's accusation? All I know is that there's a video of him talking to police, which doesn't mean you're guilty of anything. You could have been a witness to something, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's any evidence. Have you guys heard anything else in regards to that?
Well, I don't think there's even any accusations. Nobody's saying that he did anything. It's just that he was involved in an incident at a bar. What I'm hearing is that it was just an argument with a friend of his, and that's what he's explaining to the police in that video. But I think they even asked either the owner of the bar or some other witnesses if anything really happened, and they're all just saying that there was some yelling, but not any actual incident.
Different. He says, yeah, the Hunt thing is out of proportion. I mean, a lot of this stuff does with these guys. A lot of stuff gets blown out of proportion because they're famous. They're in the spotlight. Stuff that shouldn't matter gets put out there. Stuff that does matter somehow goes under the radar. And that's just the way it is with any celebrity. With any celebrity. Um, all right. Anybody out there, if you have any questions, if you're wondering where somebody fell, okay, he's telling me to turn my mic up. Um, Mic is up. Check, check. How's that sound, Chris? That's weird because I haven't even changed the volume on this and it's always been good. Let me know if that sounds better. Way better, he says. Way better. Okay. um, yeah, if you're out there watching and you are wondering if where somebody is in the ADP, go ahead and ask in the chat. We will share and we will kind of talk about what we think about certain players in certain areas. When you guys are looking at this list of ADP, like knowing somebody's going in one spot, is there somebody that you are really, really targeting, or that you would target looking at this mock draft data? Bridger, what do you think?
Looking through it, just some of the same guys that I've been talking about all off season, guys like Kiki and Naheem Hines, I think are still really good values. Stay away from quarterbacks. There's plenty of them to pick up later. And then as far as, to me, I think basically all the rookie receivers are going too early. I'd rather target other guys in those areas. Like, let's see. Sorry, I accidentally scrolled down. Oh, never mind. I can't find where he's at anymore. Looking for N'Keal Harry.
Oh, he's at 65.
65.
65. And there was a question somebody posted that was saying, did you guys forget about N'Keal Harry? Because he hasn't went yet. And then his ADP is 65. And I'm going, wow.
Yeah, there's a couple of later ones, 78, couple of 78s, but even as high as 53, which I think is really early. Even just with guys like Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams, Chris Godwin, all guys with some experience under the belt, and at least some level of production in that early 50 range. So yeah, it's just the rookie wide receivers. I'm not a big fan of any of them other than Metcalf. Just due to landing spots, there's not a lot of immediate production to be had compared to guys who have been wide receiver twos, or who have some clear opportunity going into this year.
It is crazy to me that Chris Godwin, even as much as I like Corey Davis, it is crazy to me that those guys and then guys like Edelman and Miles Sanders are even in the same like area as Tyler Lockett. Like, I think Tyler Lockett is really low in comparison to some of these other guys. Like, I understand last year was like a historically efficient year, but when we know he's the number one wide receiver there, we know he's got one of in my opinion, the three best quarterbacks in the league. The guy's going to produce, and he might not produce at such a high efficiency, but he's going to see more targets. I think that offense is going to have to throw more. We've talked about that. Their defense is not what it used to be. And the fact that he's with those guys, like if you asked me, Tyler Lockett or Julian Edelman, like there's absolutely no question. Unless I'm in a must-win now situation. That would be the only way. But if I'm drafting for a startup, they're not even in the same category to me.
Yeah, Julian Edelman seems really, really high at 55.
Yeah, it seems like the 50s as a whole, it's kind of a weird grouping of guys. I mean, you see, like Devonta Freeman's at like 50, was it 56 or something like that? It's like, guys like that going before, say, Jarvis Landry or O.J. Howard, I guess Tariq Cohen and Philip Lindsay in the low 60s seems odd when, people are taking Miles Sanders before him. I mean, kind of after pick like 41, 42, things start to get a little strange. I mean, Darius Geis is a guy that has question marks. People seem to really be liking him, but then David Montgomery goes a spot before him, and guys like Calvin Ridley are lower than him. It's just from 42 on, it seems really strange how the chips fell. But you can even tell, like if you look between the different divisions, there's kind of a big discrepancy as to where people value them.
Yeah, I actually think like the player pool as a whole right now is really polarizing because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of guys. It's not like the old days where you had a number one receiver and you had a number one running back and we knew who those guys were. It's not like that anymore. But it's crazy to me that some of these guys fall in these categories and we look even behind all these guys and you've got guys like you can't tell me that even with as disappointing as Sammy Watkins and Allen Robinson have been, that Harry and Pettis and then those guys that we named ahead of them are in the same ballpark. Like at least we've seen them produce. They've been on the field. These other guys are complete question marks that have never been on the field, and they should not be in the same category as those guys, in my opinion. But we're not that far removed from the draft. There's still a lot of rookie talk going on because of guys at camp that are showing out. So the rookie hype's still there. This is probably as the summer goes on and as training camps start and as we get closer to the season, this is probably going to even out. You're going to see some of these younger veterans push back up and some of these rookies drop. But yeah, that was a little crazy to me also. Sterling Shepard, I think, is criminally undervalued right now at 76. I mean,
Absolutely.
this dude is not your deep threat, but that's good because his quarterback can't throw it deep. But he's going to get targets. There's no doubt about it. What is your thought on Sterling Shepard at 76, Bridger?
I like Sterling Shepard. It's actually interesting. You look at that, and you can see how close his grouping is as far as the picks go. He goes from 75 up to 81, so only a six-spot difference for a guy in the 70s. That's a pretty tight grouping. So it seems like that's about where his truthers lie. I like Sterling Shepard a lot. I don't know if he's in for a huge sort of upgrade this year. I like Golden Tate as well, and I think he'll be equally as involved. I'm a little lower on Evan Ingram than most, so that helps both of them, in my opinion. But yeah, I like Sterling Shepard, and he's a great pick there compared to guys like Tevin Coleman, who are really, really questionable running backs. Rashad Penny, all in that same range. I like Sterling Shepard a lot.
Yeah, I definitely think that he's probably at least a round too low, and possibly more. I mean, do we really think the difference between Sterling Shepard and Tyler Boyd is all that much? I guess is my question. Tyler Boyd's all the way up at 56. You've got Sterling Shepard down at 76. Is there really a 20 pick gap in between those two players?
I would say no. I mean, I'm a fan of both. The interesting thing is Sterling Shepard. I see as a guy who's going to have long-term value. He may not be great this year with Eli, just because Eli's only going to throw 550, 575 passes, and he'll complete 65% of those. But there's a lot of mouths to feed in that short to intermediary passing game. With Tate. Ingram will probably be a little more of a deep guy. Sterling Shepard. You've got Saquon out of the backfield. I mean, so it'll be interesting to see kind of. I think this is probably maybe 10 or so spots too late. Like he really should be in the kind of the low 60s, I would think. But not far behind Boyd. I like Boyd a little bit more, but not by much. And definitely, Golden Tate's at like 91. So you would think that there should be a bigger difference between those two because I still think Shepard's better than Tate, even this year.
I guess here's a question: if we knew Daniel Jones was going to be the starter by like week 8, how much does your guys' value change with all these New York Giants? Whether we're talking Tate or Shepard or Ingram or even Saquon Barkley.
I think Tate has value this year for a rookie quarterback because he's better at understanding the routes. He's probably going to be the guy that you can trust the most to know where he's going to be if Daniel Jones can keep up with the speed of the game. Where Sterling Shepard may have a little bit of a harder time. It may take time to build the chemistry, but this is Dynasty. Like, I don't want aging guys if I don't need them. Golden Tate's kind of bounced around a little bit, where Sterling Shepard I think has a much longer term value. But what do you think, Bridger?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Daniel Jones is going to change much for any of them this year. I mean, Eli Manning can't get the he can't push the ball deep anyways, so they're both going to be targeting guys underneath, which they have 3 slot receivers there, and Shepard, Ingram, and Tate. So I don't know how it'll be divvied up, but I don't think Daniel Jones will change anything for him.
I think he can get it down the field a bit farther than our boy Eli Manning. But I do agree that he is not the guy. Like, he wouldn't have fit Odell Beckham if Odell Beckham was there. Like, he'd be just like Eli in comparison to him. But yeah, I don't. That's the problem. I think he'll be more accurate. I think that he makes less bad decisions. I think that that's the strength that Daniel Jones has. And I just think anything's better than Eli, really. Bridger, you could probably go start, and I would feel like it adds value to those guys. So, Joey McKenzie says, how do y'all feel about Curtis Samuel? He's about to break out and have a monster season. Are we all agreeing that Dalvin Cook will never be the prospect that we all thought he would be coming out of college due to his health? So there's a two-parter there, and I read it all in one. So first we'll start off. Curtis Samuel, is this his breakout year? Is he going to be the biggest fantasy producer of the Panthers wide receiver core, Bridger?
Man, that's tough between him and DJ Moore. I like Curtis Samuel. I liked him a lot coming out. I've liked him all along. I was real low on him after he tore up his ankle just because he's a burner, and I didn't know if he'd be the same again. But, man, his stock has risen a ton this offseason, and I think a lot of it's warranted, but it's gone a little higher than I would prefer. So I have actually been shopping some shares of him. I think DJ Moore's definitely the guy long term, but Samuel's definitely in for a bigger year this year than he had last.
Brad, what about you?
Yeah, it's tough to like Carolina receivers with 58% completion percentage, Cam Newton throwing the ball. I like the talent of both Moore and Samuel, and I think it's hard for me to see Samuel breaking out this year, especially if Cam Newton is really still hurt and maybe not fully ready to go. They don't have anything behind him that's really exciting when it comes to a quarterback waiting. So it's hard for me to make that case. I mean, he's got the talent to do it. I mean, he's a good receiver. He's gotten better at route running. He catches the ball well, and he's obviously he's got the speed to take it to the house from anywhere on the field. So if Cam Newton's there and he's healthy the entire season, yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know that I would take Samuel over DJ Moore, and our ADP is definitely not helping. I think our ADP has him in the hundreds at this point. So obviously the community isn't as high on him either when it comes to long-term value. I mean, they're taking plenty of quarterbacks before him. Even just in a PPR league. So I'm not sold on him breaking out this year, but he's got the talent to do so. I just think Cam Newton's probably not going to help him any.
Yeah, I actually think that he is going to break out this year. And I think he's the most dynamic. Like, this dude can do so many things in the offense. But I think that DJ Moore is the better wide receiver. But Samuel is going to get so many opportunities. Like, they've got such a weird combination of players in that offense with McCaffrey out of the backfield and DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel as receivers, like they all do different things that help open up space for the other ones. And the one thing you don't want is Curtis Samuel getting space. He gets space and he can make things happen. So I really like him in that offense. It might be better for all those guys if somebody else is the quarterback, somebody a little more accurate. But it seems like a theme here with the last couple teams we're talking about is accuracy and being able to hit receivers downfield. Okay, so second part of that question was, are we all agreeing that Dalvin Cook will never be the prospect that we all thought when he came out of college due to his health? Brad, why don't you start us off on this one? And first, Rob Sullivan, thanks for showing up. Always nice to see you. And Anthony, welcome to the live stream.
Yeah, no, I can't rule out Dalvin Cook at this point. I think if he can stay healthy, remotely healthy, I think he still has the potential. I don't know. I have 0 shares of him because I wouldn't pay the price. Even when he got hurt last year, I started asking the Cook owners what's it cost? And even look at our ADP. I think he's top 20 in our ADP. We talked about him in the second round, and I just people are still very high on him, and there's just too much risk. And for me, I want like we always say, we want consistency. Well, consistency definitely his injury history is nothing that makes me excited about him. So I wouldn't say that he won't reach his full potential. I'm just saying that those injuries, I'm not willing to pay the price that people want for him, whether it's a startup or if you've already got him and you're trying to buy him. So I won't say no. If you have him, I would hold him for sure, though.
What about you, Bridger?
Yeah, like I said a little earlier, I'm out on him as early as he's going because of his injuries. I wouldn't say that he won't be the prospect we thought he would be. I think he's still an elite talent and could be a true star running back if he can stay healthy. But it's too big of a risk for me to be willing to pay for. If I owned him anywhere right now, I'd probably hold because he's not worth a whole lot more than I value him. But he's just a really risky prospect, and I'd rather have somebody a little safer in that range.
I don't disagree with you guys whatsoever. Obviously, that is when I did my article on running backs making it into the top 12 of running backs for the first time. That was the one thing is injury. But at the same time, it's also really hard to predict injuries, even with players that have been injured before, and then even with players that have never been injured at all, especially at the running back position. So it's hard for me. Like, I'm not taking a running back in the second round very often anyway, but it's hard for me to try to say Dalvin Cook's going to get injured or Leonard Fournette's going to get injured, and at the same time say that, Nick Chubb's not going to, or Joe Mixon's not going to get injured in that same area. Like, I feel like every running back on every rush, there's just that chance of them being injured and missing significant time. So until there's like something that's just crazy, I can't knock him below some of these other guys. Darius Geis is still going 44. We haven't even seen him touch the field, and he had a really serious injury. So that's the only thing that I would say in regards to that. Like, I like Dalvin Cook a lot. My biggest worry is just that load management is going to be the thing that holds him back, even if he is healthy. And when you couple those, then it gets really kind of murky. But Anthony asked Chubb or Cook. I'm taking Cook every time over Chubb. What about you, Bridger? I think I know you.
Chubb for me. I think Chubb's better prospect. I liked him more coming out of school. I like his situation better. So yeah, Chubb for me for sure.
Brad.
Yeah, definitely Chubb for me. I think if you're looking to acquire him, you probably have missed your window. The up and down news about Hunt. I mean, the conversation about Johnson maybe being out of there at some point soon. I mean, everywhere where I've inquired about Chubb, I mean, guys are wanting a lot for him, and we're even seeing it here. He's going in the top 20, and I'm probably not taking, like you. I don't know that I've drafted a second round running back in a long time in the startup. So I like Chubb more, but I don't know that I would get him for what people are wanting him for.
See, and Joey says I personally think Chubb is the truth. I think he is an outstanding runner, as I said earlier. But when we're playing PPR, you got to be able to catch the ball. You got to be able to catch the ball to produce those fantasy numbers that we're looking for out of a second round running back. And I don't know whether Hunt's there or not. Like, they are adamant on keeping Duke Johnson for a reason. And it's not so that he can spell Chubb in the running game. We know that's not where they're going to use him. But that's my thing. Dalvin's going to catch some passes. I don't think it's not gonna be like an astronomical number, but I think it could be double what Chubb does, and they both have injury histories, so there's that too. If you're gonna not cook for injuries, you can't look at Chubb and not talk about his. Yeah, he's a year removed, but really Cook was healthy-ish last year. There was a lot of load management there. So that would be my thing with those two. What other questions we got out there, guys? I know that Bridger's gonna have to take off here. He has to go here at 9:30. Is there any last thoughts that you want to say before you take off, and then we might field a couple more questions here before we sign off?
No, I think that's it. If anybody doesn't have any other questions, the only thing with the Chubb and Dalvin Cook injury history thing that you were talking about is Chubb has one really serious injury in his background, but Cook's got a knee injury. He's got a couple of shoulder things. He's just got a bunch of different things that keep popping up. And Chubb is 2 years removed now, and I don't think the knee is an issue. But I do agree that if Cook can be healthy, I just think he's less likely to be. He's probably going to be the better back to own in PPR leagues, just because of his pass catching ability compared to Chubb. But I don't think Chubb is going to be too bad either. I think he'll be able to boost his numbers up to a consistent 35 or so catches per year.
Yeah, that was one really serious injury that Chubb had. Really, really serious. I do agree he doesn't have all the little, knick-knack things that Dalvin has had, but you can play through a lot of those. You can't play through the serious stuff, and we just never know how a running back longevity. I mean, we've seen some guys. What was his name? I think he played for Miami, and he had that really gruesome injury when he was in college, and they didn't even know if he was ever going to play again. And then he had some injuries early in his professional career and then just went like nutso and barely had any injuries the rest of his career. You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. He was in Buffalo too, wasn't he?
McGinnis?
McGahee, Willis McGahee.
Yeah, Willis McGahee.
Right.
That guy had a lot of injuries. Everybody said like he's not going to be anything because he had so many injuries, and then the dude just was a workhorse for quite a while. So you just never know how those injury things are gonna pan out. But Bridger, we'll let you get out of here. I know you got to go. We've got a couple questions here, and we'll answer those, and we'll see you next Monday.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Take it easy, man.
Thanks, Bridger. All right. Adam Krause says Geronimo Allison or Marcus Valdez-Scantling. This one's so easy to me. Easy to me.
I'm guessing it's probably got to be Geronimo Allison, just because he's got the history with Aaron Rodgers. But for me, I would go Equanimeous St. Brown just because I like him more. But that doesn't mean it's right. It's just what I like.
Well, absolutely. For immediate return, Geronimo is easily my guy. But for long term, I'm the same way. Like, I think it's crazy I don't know that I've even entered ESB in this data yet. And we've got one whole thing that was finished. I don't know if he got drafted or not in 16 rounds. No.
Yeah, I don't see him on here.
And
Yeah, no, I don't. He didn't get drafted yet.
and Valdez Scantling is going 129. Like that's just like ludicrous to me. I think
Well, and the
ESB.
funny thing, if you look at guys like Rob Gronkowski got drafted, a guy who's not even in the league anymore. You're seeing guys get drafted at the bottom of this draft that, ESB I could clearly make a case has got better long-term value.
If you're taking Rob Gronkowski in the top 16 rounds, don't don't
You're mad. Yeah.
don't waste that. They're still. I mean, you're still looking at okay, so Doug Baldwin, I can see. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't think he's announced his retirement yet, has he? He's just a free agent right now. I know it's like iffy, but still, we're looking at guys like Justin Jackson. All these
He's
guys.
clearly the spell for Melvin Gordon. I mean, he's draftable.
Yeah, and yeah, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I go Allison all day. When it comes to them two, Valdez Scantling is at least the fourth receiver, if not the fifth receiver. If you like Kumaro more, you could have Kumaro as the fourth receiver there. But I will say those bottom three, I think it's easily Adams and Allison.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it does get a little more murky. But the fact that ESB ran out of the slot last year when Randall Cobb was hurt towards the end of the year, that I think just he should be the highest one drafted outside of those top two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, easily. I mean, and that's the tough thing is I hear guys trying to make case for Jamon Moore because he's the highest drafted of them, but they're just not. I mean, ESB has the most physical tools, and if you have him in the slot in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, I mean that's just dangerous.
You know how
really.
You know how I love my big slot guys. Like I can't believe more teams don't use them. But finish up. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, no, I mean it's tough. It's tough because when you look at the big guys, they're not always the best hands. Especially when you think of the kind of the taller guys. So your slot receiver really has to be, kind of Golden Tate-esque hands. That's why Funchess I like and I'm excited about, and I own him now in a few places. But he also is the scariest of them, because it's like he could really be huge, or those drops that he had with Carolina could be dangerous. So I love the big slot receivers, but they've got to have really good hands, and that's sometimes hard to find.
I definitely think for one, drops are overrated. Because for one, they're not even an NFL stat, so people that are putting out those stats they try to decide what's a drop and what's not, and none of us really know. Like you see those clear ones that are just like obvious. Like I think Kittle last year in the Green Bay game, maybe it was, like had a clear drop, and
Mm-hmm.
you see those, but then sometimes you see these stats and you're just like I've watched these guys this whole year and I don't remember seeing like 8 clear drops by
mistakes.
this receiver. But then you look at some of the all-time greats, like Terrell Owens led the league like 3 times in drops. Jerry Rice was in the top 5 like 8 times. If they're passing you the ball, there's going to be drops. If you're not that good, they'll quit throwing it to you. So I definitely think that's an overrated stat. But I love them big slot guys, man. Saints have proven that it works.
Oh yeah, and I try to give the benefit of the doubt to the receiver, especially I'll go back to Funchess. I mean, Cam Newton doesn't know how to find his receivers very well. I mean, he leads them all over the place, and Funchess, did the best he could. I mean, and that happens with a lot of them. I mean, think of the guys like T.O. who he had throwing him the ball, and Jerry Rice who he had throwing him the ball. Great quarterbacks in history, but think about Montana and the way that he played the game. I mean, Jerry Rice had to do just as much work to make sure he caught so many of those passes. So I mean, I don't want to necessarily say the drops because I agree with you. It's kind of a goofy stat, but quarterback play is just as important. And a guy like Funchess, that's why I'm just as much excited about him, because I know it's Cam Newton's fault too.
I'll
Because
tell you
he's
what,
crazy.
Dontrell Inman was valuable and startable towards the end of last year. If you needed a wide receiver 4 or a flex, you could put Inman in there. And Inman is not as good as Funchess is, in my opinion. If Funchess is used right, Carolina did not use him right. But that's such a huge upgrade going from Cam to Andrew Luck. It is just from a pure football aspect, not a fantasy aspect, because Cam's always been fantasy relevant. But Joey asked another question. He says, can y'all talk about Amari hype and why? If you break down his numbers at Dallas, he only had 2 to 3 great games that padded his stats. The rest of his games were 2 to 4 receptions for under 50 yards. Well, first, I'll start off with this one because everybody knows my Amari Cooper love. First, you're going to get that with wide receivers. I mean, we saw Julio Jones, who is arguably a top 5 receiver of all time, go how long without scoring a touchdown or being, just like he couldn't find the end zone. Like, there's so much variance from week to week. And when it comes to wide receivers, now you do have some guys that are more consistent and whatnot, but your big producers are, they're not always going to be there. And this is still a 25-year-old guy. He's still young. Most guys are not in their 5th season at 25 years old. Just doesn't happen very often. But he's a guy that's played 4 years. He's got 3,000-yard seasons. And he went to a new team mid-season. Like, you're going to see inconsistencies when you go to a new offense with a new quarterback mid-season. The fact that it was as good as it was very surprising to even me, who really likes the talent in Amari Cooper. So when you ask me, I don't think the hype's enough. This is a guy that 2 years ago was a top 8 Dynasty pick. And he had one bad year in Oakland, and then last year started off bad in Oakland. But as soon as he left, I told everybody, all this guy needs is targets. And he was getting very inconsistent targets. When he gets his targets, he scores fantasy points.
Yep.
It's just the way it's going to be. But when you have a guy like Zeke, if you have a lead, you're not going to be leaning on Amari Cooper. So you're going to have those up and down games. You're going to give Zeke 30 touches out of the backfield, and that's just going to be the way it is when you have the lead. So I don't think their defense is going to be – I think their defense is going to be good, but I think they're going to have to throw more this year, and he's going to have a full year there and a full offseason. I think he's going to be more consistent. He's still going to be a little boom or bust, though. But he's going to have some big freaking weeks.
Well, and he gets his targets. I mean, other than his one down year, he's never had, less than 100+ targets. He's a guy that is in his prime, in his peak, at such a young age. You can get some really good long-term value out of him. A guy like Amari Cooper. So let's put it this way. We talk about the curse of 400 touches. The curse of Ezekiel Elliott is bad decision-making. What happens if next year Zeke's gone and, Tony Pollard's your running back with whoever they draft or something like that? And let's say their defense is just, kind of in the 17 to 12 range when it comes to kind of the overall league. They're probably going to lean on their receivers a lot more. And Amari Cooper, I mean, you could easily make a case where he's getting somewhere in the range of 125 to 150 targets and probably catching 75% of those down the road. So I'm definitely long term. I would go after Amari Cooper. This year he may still be boom or bust, but you might as well get him before he's back up to being a top 8 dynasty pick. Because it's going to happen if they don't keep Zeke after this year, which you never know what's going to happen with Zeke. And all these touches start wearing Zeke down. I mean, it just makes sense.
I do want to say, when you look at his total targets, they look good. But when you look at his game logs, there's a lot of There's a lot of games in Oakland where he saw 3 targets, 2 targets. And I think a big problem was that was the year after Carr got hurt. He was very skittish. It was just it was bad. It was bad for Oakland for 2 years. So that's there. So Anthony asks, what are your thoughts on Corey Davis? Do the Titans finally draft someone else next year? I believe by that he means at quarterback. Oh, yeah. He said it in the next one. Yep, at quarterback. Why don't you start us off on Corey Davis? They're asking about all the players I like.
I know. Well, and Corey Davis is a guy that I've targeted this offseason just because of, them drafting A.J. Brown and having this kind of mass amount of receivers and Mariota's injury history. Like, I've gone after Corey Davis everywhere. I mean, his talent is probably top 7 in my mind. I mean, if you can keep Mariota healthy for the full season or some form of Mariota and Tannehill healthy throughout the year, I think Corey Davis is easily, top 7 receiver in fantasy, in the receiver category at least. I love him. I love his talent. I love everything he brings to the table. He's gotten better in his route running ability as you've watched him. I mean, he's matured quite well as a receiver. I'm huge on him. I've gone after him and probably not paid full price, but paid pretty close to full price. What about you, Rick? What do you think about? Well, I know what you think about him, but tell the listeners at home what you think about him.
Yeah, I've loved Corey Davis. We've only seen 2 years, and really the first year, he had that nagging ankle injury coming in. So, I just don't get why people fall on any wide receiver. If you liked a wide receiver his rookie year, going into his rookie year, but you don't like him after year 2, like there has to be like good reasons, and he hasn't shown anything. It's been at the quarterback position that a lot of these issues have come from. So I can't, I was taking him at the mid 3rd round, at pick 30. If you want to get him from me, you're gonna have to pay that. I'm not willing to give him up this early.
Well, Tennessee doesn't pay us any favors when they draft receivers every year. I mean, that is very confusing when you've had, Taywan Taylor, Tajay Sharp, A.J. Brown. I mean, they're just throwing receivers in there.
Well, and this is where I find it different than with, the Jaguars. They just pile wide receivers and sign them and everything. Tennessee, when they took A.J. Brown this year, he was the best player on the board. They just took best player. And that does make it confusing, but I think Corey Davis, obviously this guy's a top 10, 5th pick in the draft. He's their guy, and they're going to give him every opportunity, and they know that this offense is not giving him much opportunity in the 1.25 years he's been healthy. So Will says Bridger's frozen. Yeah, Bridger had to take off. So he left a frozen image of himself with that beautiful, beautiful hair. Let's see. Gronk is not coming back, Rob said. And then he said, peace out, boys. Great job as always. Anthony said amen on the drop stat. He agrees that it's definitely
overblown for sure.
Overblown. Mm. Are you guys buying the hype around Moncrief coming out of camp? No, I haven't been buying it for the last 3 years. That's like buying into Devontae Parker. Not doing it. Not doing it.
Buying into Ryan Fitzpatrick no-look passes during the season. That's not going to happen.
No, that'll happen. He'll throw a lot of interceptions, but Ryan Fitzpatrick will make plays. He'll turn the ball over a lot too, but he'll make plays. You can't take that. That dude has made plays his whole career. He just hasn't made good decisions.
He makes bad decisions.
Yeah, he makes bad decisions. And that's crazy for an Ivy leaguer. You'd think he'd make smarter decisions. He left on purpose. Thanks, fellas, Joey says. No problem. Any more questions out there? We want to answer some more. Scott Carpenter says 2 firsts and Harris for Cooper. Okay, first of all,
I would Damian Harris.
That's what I was wondering. Or what's the other one? Maurice Harris? Those are the only two I can
Oh
think
yeah,
of.
Oakland
Um,
Patriots.
I'm assuming Damian Harris though, but then I would also like to know. I'm assuming if it's Damian Harris, we're talking about 2020 first. Now, this is something that I want to stress because there was a question in chat about a 2020 first for Philip Lindsay, and it was a 2020, a mid 2020. This is what you guys have to remember when you're talking about future picks. If you are looking at this pick, you have to be either sure it's early or no, it's late. Because if you're talking about a mid first round pick, the variance in those can change and sway so much, right? If a guy's in the middle and you think he's in the middle, finishing sixth in the league during the regular season can cost you, 4 picks when he goes on a 2-week heater in the playoffs. And now you're getting the 10th pick instead of getting, the 5th pick. I can't stress enough how if you aren't certain, and you can't be certain this early, but in that trade where they asked about Philip Lindsay, is there any way in hell that you're taking less than, literally the 5th pick in next year's draft or the 6th pick in next year's draft for Philip Lindsay?
Man, that's a tough one. Anytime a coaching staff changes, I kind of pause to see. I don't necessarily jump on board unless I'm getting a great deal. So a 2020 pick with as much hype as the class is getting, for a guy like Philip Lindsay, whose new head coach is defensive minded, loves to pound it, and Philip Lindsay is coming off an injury, I would hold just because I want to see something. And this time of year, I always caution guys that unless they are certain that they love the deal they're getting, I don't trade. Like this time of year, I just kind of let chips fall. Now, that being said, in our '96 team, I wound up trading DeAndre Hopkins just like 2 days after I drafted him, but I couldn't pass the deal up. But normally this time of year, I'm very cautious on my trades just because we're less than 3 weeks away from training camps opening. I want to see what some of these new coaches are doing. That's why Bengals players outside of Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon, I'm just kind of holding. AJ Green, I've tried to sell by now. A guy like Philip Lindsay, I'm not jumping on board and going after him unless I'm getting him at a bargain price just because I liked Royce Freeman coming out. And, so when it comes to that, I would just hold and see what happens. You can always make that deal in season when you have better information about what's happening, where your team is at, where that team is at. I wouldn't jump on something like that.
So when we get back to Scott's question, it's 2 firsts and a Harris for Cooper. For one, Harris is like a 3rd round pick to me this year.
Yeah,
I don't love
yeah.
him. I don't love him in that offense. People are like, they're getting hype over Damian Harris, but they're talking about, well, I don't like Sony because they use so many running backs. Well, then why are you giving any value to Harris? Like it doesn't make any sense because Sony's the better running back, like clear cut better running back. And he got his knee scoped again, but he's the better running back, and they say he's healthy. So he means nothing to me in this deal. So now, if you're telling me you get 2 early first round picks, that's one thing. But if these picks have a chance, one of these picks is going to get worse because I'm assuming one of these picks is that team's pick. His team gets better when you give him Cooper. If that other pick doesn't look like it's going to be a top-end pick, then there's no way I'm doing it. That's 2 huge question marks for, as I said, a guy that has more yards and receptions by the age 25 than I believe anybody but DeAndre Hopkins in the NFL right now.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Absolutely.
I'm not doing it. So, but if you really think that both picks are going to be early, top 4 picks, then at minimum, you're going to be able to flip those picks before the draft next year.
Mm-hmm.
Scott says, I have the picks. My wide receivers are DJ Moore and Sutton. I need a wide receiver 1. Scott, I would have to be really serious. If you get where are you at running back? How do you feel your team's gonna fall? And that other pick that you've got, what do you think of that team? He thinks both will be late. If they're both late, I'm spinning them right now, and I'm taking Cooper.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, if they're both late, then you might as well go with the better option.
And especially if you think they're both late before you get Cooper. And by late, I mean if they're both gonna be 8, 9, 10, yeah, then I'm definitely taking Cooper over that. But they will, and I will say this: no matter what pick you've got right now, no matter where it ends up, it will be worth more next March than it is right now. That's just the value will go up and up and up. Scott Carpenter says David Johnson, Mixon, and Montgomery at running back. That right there is a trio that I think is going to do you very, very well.
Mm-hmm. Get Cooper. Throw them together with that. I mean, that's big. It's a big roster.
I think that would be real good for your team. And unless it's a super flex, I don't need to know who your tight ends or quarterbacks are because you can stream them. You can figure that out later. Anthony says, Coop. All right. Do we have any more questions? Any more questions at all? If not, we are going to get out of here. We said Brad, we knew when we both got on here that we weren't going to be able to do this. We were not going to be able to get done in an hour. It never works when we both get on here. We both like talking and helping people out. So,
yeah, I could stream all night long, which I've tried with Colin. I think we went 2.5 hours a couple weeks back.
Yeah, I think I went two plus in one not too long ago. So, Diggs, Cooper Kupp, Diggs. I love Cooper Kupp, but I mean Diggs is the value's just in Diggs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at this point.
I love both. I love both.
Yeah, I like them both, but I like Brandon Cooks and I like Adam Thielen as well. So it's I mean, those are all all of the receivers from those teams are solid. I mean, at least valuable right now.
Anthony, Anthony says, I wish you guys started an hour later at 5 p.m. Pacific. I might push it back. I've been trying to figure out. It's hard, especially I'm in the Midwest, so I start at 8:30 my time. It's hard to figure out what's going to be best for everybody. So I try to fit in the middle of East Coast, West Coast, and try to make it work. But he says, he would take Kupp over Amari Cooper. I mean, that's just burning value because just ADP wise, Cooper Kupp's 30 spots behind Amari Cooper. But I said, Amari Cooper is a guy that at 25 has as many catches or more catches, more yards than I think any other active receiver at the age of 25. So,
yeah.
I love Cooper Kupp, but there's no way I'm taking him over. I mean, if you have to take Amari Cooper and then trade Amari Cooper and get Kupp plus something else if that's the scenario that you want. I don't blame you for doing that. But if you pass just because you don't like somebody, it's the same thing with me. Last year, I did not want anything to do with Le'Veon Bell at his price, but he fell a little bit, and I had to take him. And if that meant I had to trade him to get what I like more, then that's it. But there gets to be a certain point where you can't pass on a player because their value is just too much to do it. You're going to be able to get something out of him. And people always say, yeah, but obviously the league doesn't value him the same way that you do or the same way that the general public does. But at some point that value is going to get returned to you.
Well, and Cooper doesn't have anybody that's really going to challenge him for being the guy in Dallas. I mean, Gallup's not there. They don't have anybody. Cup, I'm a big Brandon Cooks fan. Like he just is successful everywhere he goes. Now he has huge weeks and he has down weeks, but so Cooper Cup has plenty of options that could be taking targets away from him. Amari Cooper's going to get his targets. I mean, and it's just I don't know how you can pass up on him for any of the any of the guys falling behind him in our ADP. I mean, there's nobody I'd want more than Amari Cooper. I mean, where he's at.
Yeah, and he says Dak can't hold Goff's jock. Well, that may be true, but Amari Cooper also doesn't have to catch the ball 40 yards down the field either. He showed that he doesn't need that. He can make stuff happen after the catch. But Cooper Kupp, I definitely think he is the apple of Jared Goff's eye. I think he's going to be very, very valuable. But as all I'm saying is that right now we're looking at our ADP. You've got Amari
Cooper's
Cooper
at 19.
20.
Oh, is he 20?
20,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think.
he's 20. Yeah.
And Cooper Kupp is at 47. So you're talking about a two and a quarter round difference in value. So you if it came down to just those two players, you have to take Amari Cooper, and then you can trade him for Cooper Kupp plus something, a decent amount of something. So that's the only thing I'm saying. I do think Cooper Kupp's value is going to be at least a round and a half higher by the time we get 4 weeks into the season and people see that he's healthy and he is Jared Goff's best friend.
Well, and it's interesting, even looking at our ADP, I mean, even the consensus in the community is Brandon Cooks is higher. I mean, he's like 13 spots higher than Cooper Kupp, you know. So it's interesting to me how, in this case, I mean, Amari Cooper just there really isn't a conversation in my mind why you wouldn't take Amari Cooper well before you take, any of those other guys. I mean, Amari Cooper's just, he's got the better opportunity. He's the better talent, long term, short term. I mean, stats don't lie. I mean, he's a stud. I mean, you can't pass him up.
And I would have to look, but he hasn't signed a. I think there's definitely doubt that Cooks is the number one. I think Cooper Kupp proved that before his injury last year. He was the clear number one before that injury, and I don't think that. I don't think just because of the injury that's going to change. I do think Cooks might be a little more involved, and Robert Woods could take a hit this year. But I think Cooper Kupp's going to get his no matter what, as long as he's healthy. Let's see. I was offered Mike Evans and Chris Carson from my Chubb and Corey Davis.
Oof. I think long term, I like Chubb and Davis better, but Mike Evans is definitely the best piece in that deal. Chris Carson's solid though. I mean, he's as long as he's healthy, he's nice. He's a decent running back, but
I think on a value standpoint, it's going to lean Chubb and Davis, because I think Davis is probably a good round ahead of Carson. And right now, for some reason, Chubb and Evans just aren't that far apart. Corey Davis is 53.
Chris Carson's much further down.
Yeah,
he's 78.
78. So
yeah,
talking about almost two rounds of difference there. So from a pure value standpoint, it's probably Davis and Chubb. If you're trying to win this year, and you want to win this year, then I go with Evans and Carson. So there is a part there are situations where you might burn a little bit of value, but you could always ask for a pick back or something in those situations or whatever. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
for
I
sure.
don't see any more active questions here. Anthony, I will look into maybe pushing this back to 9 or 9:30 Eastern and seeing how that works out next week. And okay, I'll answer this real quick. Scott asks, what are the values of players with blemishes like Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt? So um, right now, Tyreek Hill has a ADP of 42, and here's where I think it's crazy. We absolutely know Kareem Hunt is missing 8 games. And unless this situation that just happened, which happened after he was drafted in these leagues, um, unless something else happens there and it's more, we know it's only 8 games. We have not known what is going to happen with Tyreek Hill, and we already talked today about Goodell's ability to just do whatever he wants and make it whatever he wants. We have no idea. Um, the fact that Tyreek Hill is 42, but Kareem Hunt is 72, and these were both guys that were top 12 startup picks before their incidents. Like, I don't understand why one has dropped so much more than the other. When we know, like, yeah, we're missing a half a season, but the other guy, we're still wondering. If it's only a half a season, like if you told me that Barkley was going to lose 8 games, how far is he going to drop? Probably not gonna.
No.
He's going to be the number 1 overall. So that is a little confusing to me of the difference there.
Yeah, well, and we see even in our ADP, I mean, Hunt's down at like 72. You know,
Were you not?
it's
Were you
it's just wild.
were you busy doing something else there while I talked about that?
Yeah, no, I'm paying attention to Discord and trying to find some more questions on here for us. But yeah, it's weird to me how the communities are feeling about these guys. I mean, you know, I don't like the decisions these dudes have made in their personal lives, but I don't know that I devalue them in fantasy unless there's something that's really, you know, hey, these guys are done. You know, I mean, you like the Martavis Bryant type thing. Like, I just don't draft him anymore. I haven't drafted him. I don't think I drafted him last year in any leagues, even when there was hints that he was going to come back, and you know, and there's still kind of some hype around it. I mean, these guys are still expected to still be good contributors for at least for a little while, you know. So unless we hear otherwise, I'm surprised on how far our community has dropped them in these mock drafts. But
Like I think they should both be 4th rounders, my opinion. If Tyreek Hill is only dropping to 42, like Kareem Hunt
Cream needs to be a lot higher.
he shouldn't be dropping that much more because at least we know he's only missing 8 games, and people are worried because, oh well, Chubb, well, that's only this year.
Hmm.
Like, basically you can chalk this up almost to like Le'Veon Bell last year taking a year off, you know.
Pretty
So
close. Well, and they're saying that basically the way this is going, they're saying they take Mark Ingram, Kenyon Drake, Philip Lindsay, Tariq Cohen, Miles Sanders, Devonta Freeman. I mean, all these guys are going before Kareem Hunt. Like, I would take Kareem Hunt over Mark Ingram.
Anthony says the difference is the new team, though. Imagine if Barkley was cut, suspended for 8 games, and then signed with, oh, let's say the Saints. For one, I like Alvin Kamara, but Saquon Barkley's going to take his touches because Saquon Barkley's better. But I get what you're saying. Kareem Hunt, I think, is a better all-around running back than Nick Chubb. So I think he's going to get his touches the second half of the season. But I think that Hunt's not going to stay and split with somebody when, like, for example, don't tell me that the Dolphins, if Kareem Hunt doesn't have any issues, there's nothing else, the Dolphins aren't going to look at him. What about somebody like the Buffalo Bills? Even look at somebody like the Steelers if James Conner does fall off this year. Like, there's so many opportunities for Hunt to go get a starting job again and be the guy. And
Hmm.
if and think about this, if Kansas City doesn't part ways with Tyreek Hill, the door's open for Kareem Hunt to go return to the Kansas City. Not saying it's likely, but he's not going to be somewhere where he's going to split carries. Somebody, if he comes back and he looks good, somebody's going to give him starter money, and he'll be the starter somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Houston's a perfect one. I would love to see him in Houston. I definitely like that. You said you were looking for a question. Did you find any?
Yeah, well, the guys are basically talking about the same stuff we've been talking about for a little bit here. Where was it? All right, so one question in here that just came up not too long ago. Let's see here. People are asking about Mecole Hardman. Is he being overdrafted, underdrafted? Darrell Henderson and Mecole Hardman seem to be coming up a bunch in our Discord chats. And if you're not on Discord, you better get on there because these chats are live. These things are going. People are talking all the time.
So Mecole Hardman, I'm looking for him right now. He's not going as high as I thought he was, unless I missed him.
No, he's not. Not at least in our ADP.
Darrell Henderson's being overdrafted by a lot.
Well, look at how far Gurley fell. I mean, people are basically giving up on him.
And that's fine. Like, I understand a running back with arthritis in his knee falling, but just because he's hurt doesn't mean Darrell Henderson's good. That's my thing. That's my thing. We don't even know that he'll get the carries. Mecole Hardman, where's he at? 137. I think that's fair. I mean, he's going in an area like with, I'll take Michael Gallup at 142 over him. I'll take Austin Eckler over him right now. But most of these guys, I don't have a problem with you taking him over. I mean, he's behind Valdez-Scantling, which that shouldn't be. I don't think.
Yeah. No, I don't think so either.
But yes, Darrell Henderson is going, what was that, 85?
Yeah, looked like it.
Yeah,
85.
85. And, literally, he only has value if Todd Gurley, can't play anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an overshot for me. Josh Bell, if you're a baseball fan, just hit his third home run against the Cubs today.
That doesn't make you very happy with your Cubbies getting.
Oh, you know what? They're getting shellacked. It's 18-5. I'm over it already. I do want to say. Go ahead.
I was just like, this is a fun. This year and the next few years are fun years for me as a Tigers fan because I know they're terrible. So I can just sit back and watch baseball to enjoy baseball, and not worry because I know my team stinks. So.
Anthony, I just thinking with those players around Hardman that he's not really being overdrafted. They're all crap shoots really in that range. The thing is that I don't think Sammy Watkins is going high enough. Like if you really think that Tyreek Hill's gonna be missing time, then Watkins in his second year with Patrick Mahomes in that offense. I'm ready for it. I have so much Sammy Watkins. Like it's gonna be fun either way, whether Tyreek Hill plays or not. It's gonna be a big Watkins season. I think it's gonna be that big year that we've been waiting for. Redraft Henderson is going even higher. That's crazy. That's crazy.
You shouldn't be drafted in redraft.
Yeah, I don't know about all that. There was something I was going to say. Oh, first off, let me make sure this is showing right. The first 1,000 shirts are in. I've got some shipping stuff coming in tomorrow, and I'm going to get these out in the mail. Brad, I think what I'm going to
Looking
do
good.
is we haven't met yet, so I think I'm going to hand deliver mine, and we're going to have to grab a bite to eat or something in Fort Wayne.
I dig
Um,
it.
so those will be out soon. I am currently working on some other designs for some other Roto Heat shirts for that'll be open for everybody. I'm also working on a shirt customizer that you'll be able to go in and make a shirt. Like, say Brad and I are in a league together and Brad gets last place. I can go in and design this bright pink shirt that says I'm a fantasy loser on it or whatever, and make him wear it for a photo shoot or something. So we're gonna have that ability, and then right now, if you look on the Facebook group, and if you're not in the Facebook group, if you just go to rotoheat.com/FB community, I think is what it is. It's scrolling down here. FB Dynasty Football Community. It's a little long, but you can just search Roto Heat on Facebook, Dynasty Fantasy Football Community. You'll find us there. But I just put up a post a little bit ago. I'm going to be giving away a bunch of 1-year subscriptions to our ADP data, plus our VIP group where we'll have VIP streams that won't just cover Dynasty. They'll cover redraft. They'll cover DFS. During DFS season, I'm going to do a 2-hour show every Sunday leading up to the game that'll cover sits and starts for your redraft or your Dynasty team, and then lineup construction for DraftKings DFS, cash games and tournaments. So it's normally $2.99 a month or $29.99 for a year. But if you like our page, our Facebook page, which I've got linked there, and drop a screenshot that says that you like the page so that we know, that'll get you entered. Every time we get to 100, 100, 200, 300, I'm going to pick 2 people that will get a year subscription out of that list. So make sure you go like the page, drop the picture on that chat. Also, we've got some new podcasts starting up. I'm in the process myself of starting a daily kind of sports, just general news. This is what happened yesterday, and this is what is happening today, kind of thing. Just short, quick hitters. I'm working on that. I'm also working on a Wednesday night baseball podcast. If you're a baseball fan, it'll be general baseball news plus some fantasy stuff, and there's that. Obviously, Thursday nights, our own Brad Menendez has the Dynasty Roundtable. Great show, especially like I get a lot of questions about IDP. Don't ask me. Brad's the guy. If you got IDP, ask Brad. Plug your show, Brad. Now.
Yeah, it's great. Thursday nights, a lot of guys in the community have started coming to me, asking a lot of questions about IDP, and we try to touch on a lot of different subjects when it comes to fantasy football. It's a great time. We really don't have a set time. We start at 9 o'clock and we go until everybody's had a chance to get their questions asked. I try to get a lot of different people from the community involved. You guys have noticed I've had Chris Resendez on, I've had Colin on, Sully and I are talking about trying to get him on with me. If we could get that Canadian exchange rate to work so we could get him going. It's a good time. It's really a very laid back stream. We talk about a lot of different things and we try to make it, very easygoing. I want you to be successful and I want you to enjoy your team and the whole fantasy experience. So we try to make it as inviting as possible. I mean, we're here to have a good time. We're here to win some money. We're here to win some championships, and I think we offer you very good advice, not only on Thursday nights, but here on Monday night on the different podcasts, Sully's 2 cents. We got the Blockheads. I mean, we got a lot of stuff that gives you advice and helps you build successful dynasties, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, hockey, any of that. So, I don't always touch on that stuff on Thursday nights, but sometimes you never know. Anything's possible.
Right. I try to keep this one Dynasty football like hardcore, but if we are working on getting other sports going. So I'm out there talking, trying to get some basketball podcasts, trying to just grow this whole Roto Heat network, um, and build it into something that is fun for everybody. We are real big with our community. That's what we're here for. We want to build a huge community of fantasy sports lovers, and make it very easy for people to learn, um, and win money. There's a lot of money in fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
If you play Dynasty, if you play Redraft, if you play DFS, there's money to be made. And yes, it's fun whether we win or lose, but I don't care who you are.
It's more fun to win.
It's always more fun to win, and it's always more fun to win and win money. So, our whole goal is to help you make money. DFS is going to be real big this year. I can't wait. I'm excited. So, yeah, definitely get in there and get in on that stuff. Anthony says, Deontay Johnson, James Washington. What are your thoughts? I love James Washington. I had him right with DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton, Calvin Ridley, and Anthony Miller. Like, those five literally were separated by just little bits last year. I think James Washington takes a huge step forward.
Yeah, I like James Washington. I'm really surprised by, our resident Pittsburgh guy, Bridger. He's not a fan. He's not a big fan of James Washington at all. And I guess I don't understand why. I mean, perfect opportunity, perfect situation. He's got a good skill set. He catches the ball well. He's getting better at his route running. He's got a nice burst about him. I mean, the double team's going to go to Juju. Somebody's got to catch the ball. Deontay Johnson's not going to be ready in his rookie year. He's a prospect at best. It's going to take some time to develop. It just makes sense. I mean, James Washington should have a nice second year and in second and third year at least before, we see Big Ben leave. So I would go James Washington.
I'm with you. All right. Well, that was the last question in the chat.
Well, I just got a 96 team offer that I'm gonna say in here.
Oh.
And we could chit chat about it because it's fun. It's my team is very light at running back. I've got Saquon Barkley and Leonard Fournette are basically my big running backs. My quarterbacks are decent. I've got Kirk Cousins, I got Jared Goff, and then at receiver I'm in a pretty solid spot. Tight end I'm in a pretty solid spot. So the offer I just got sent was Russell Wilson, Josh Gordon, and Peyton Barber for Leonard Fournette and Marcus Mariota.
Let's say that one more time.
All right, so the offer I just received, so my players that I would be sending are Marcus Mariota and Leonard Fournette, and I would be receiving Russell Wilson, Peyton Barber, and Josh Gordon.
And this is super flex.
This is our Roto Heat 96er. So I've already got, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff are my starters. Mariota is obviously my third quarterback. Running back wise, Saquon Barkley and Leonard Fournette are kind of my two running backs. After that, I don't have much. Amir Abdullah, Ty Johnson, Kareth White, and Darrell Williams from Kansas City. So running back would be rough if I did that. Receiver wise, I've got Devontae Adams, I've got Brandon Cooks, Riley Ridley, Willie Snead. Demaryius Thomas, I guess, would kind of be, it's kind of Devontae Adams, Brandon Cooks, and that's kind of it. A bunch of kind of lower end guys. So Josh Gordon and Russell Wilson would be interesting. Peyton Barber, I mean, he's possibly playable, I guess. I've never been a huge Peyton Barber guy, but anything's possible in Tampa Bay. But that really, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, and Russell Wilson intrigues me. I love Josh Gordon. If the hype's real and he does actually come back and Tom Brady's, adopted him and all this stuff. I mean, Josh Gordon and Devontae Adams and Brandon Cooks as my top three would be pretty big. I mean, pretty solid.
Here's my thing. If you look at my rankings, I have Russell Wilson as my number 2 quarterback off the board in Superflex.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why people, I do understand because they haven't thrown the ball a lot, but they also had the Legion of Boom, and they also had the lead a lot. I don't think that's going to be the way that it plays out for the next 1 to 2 years. I think he's going to have to throw a lot more, and he's so efficient. So if he throws more, it's just more fantasy points for you. that one's hard. I don't think it's a bad offer. Obviously, I love Fournette too, but there's a lot of question marks there. The thing, to me, it basically comes down to, well, Russell Wilson is a lot more valuable than Fournette.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Josh Gordon and Peyton Barber aren't too far off value-wise than Marcus Mariota. Because he's devalued right now if you're looking at value. But the gap between Wilson and Fournette is big enough to make up any gap that's between Gordon and Barber and Mariota.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're getting the better side of it. But I think then you got to try to find a way to move Kirk Cousins for a running back, and then, it doesn't have to be a great third quarterback option because you're starting Jared Goff and Russell Wilson every week. So that's what I would probably do.
Yeah, it's a fun trade. I mean, it's definitely interesting. And that's the one thing I got to say is and so far in this league, the trades have been fun. Like, the guys really aren't very stingy. I mean, they're all very willing to, to kind of throw around kind of bigger trades. I mean, even the trade for DeAndre Hopkins, I wasn't expecting to receive it. It was, what was it? It was Devontae Adams, Eric Ebron, and 2022, I think is what it was, and it's like, wow, well, I guess I can't really knock that because Devontae Adams is really, he's one of those guys that I've never owned because I didn't want to pay the price, just kind of like DeAndre Hopkins. Like, I like them both a lot, but it's been fun. It's definitely an interesting league. If you're not a part of it, that sucks for you because it's definitely a good league.
Anthony did say, and I don't disagree with him, but he said he would do the same, but he would trade Cousins first. I think I don't see a problem with that, but the longer you wait, then the less chance you have of landing the number 2 quarterback in Superflex, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And like literally everything after Fournette and Russell Wilson are question marks. They've all got their question marks. So I'd rather have 2 guys with question marks where one of them might become valuable than one guy that may not.
Right.
And really, you're giving up 2 guys with huge question marks in that deal. Getting one that has 0 question marks, and then 2 more guys that have the same types of question marks. I think it's a good deal. He says I got Luck and Wilson. Those are my 1 and 2.
Yep.
I've got both of them ahead of Patrick Mahomes. People think I'm crazy, but give me them vets, baby. And they're not not old guys. They've got a good 7, 8, 9 years left in them. So I'll take those guys. So, all right. Well, I think it is time to call it a night. We are 2 hours in about.
Look at that.
Yeah. 1 hour, we said. 1 hour.
We knew that wasn't going to happen.
48 minutes over. All right, everybody. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for asking questions. And make sure you go to rotoheat.com. Peace.
See ya.